Orlando is a team I want to talk about because they lost to the Bucks, and Cam Thomas had an amazing game in which Giannis was smiling from cheek to cheek when he hit the dagger.
Giannis, man. You gotta be relegated or some shit. I don't know.
I think Cam Thomas, like, he is really good for the Bucks because they need some scoring, and he's like the best guy available, so it's good for them. We'll see when Giannis comes back. But for Orlando, the fourth quarter was a disaster, and more so for Paulo Banchero. He was awful with his shots. I think went 0 for 6 or 0 for 7.
I think.
One in the fourth quarter. He had turnovers, and now it's leading to a question because the Magic this year have been mid, and a lot of that is due to injury. Franz Wagner has missed, a boatload of games. Paulo has missed like 10 plus games. So they're not the healthiest, and that's kind of been the story for Orlando every year. But I think it begs the question that if Orlando, and that's really the team we got to talk about being like a first-round exit, if Orlando is a first-round exit again after acquiring Desmond Bane, you have to look at one of those guys on the roster that's making a lot of money and asking yourself, are we going to run it back or are we going to trade one of these dudes? And it feels like it's between Paulo and Franz. And at this point, I mean, you guys know where I've stood on Paulo. I think everybody's starting to realize what it is with Paulo. But, I mean, Paulo's just been underwhelming in his development and his shot selection for being as tall as he is, as strong as he is, such a poor paint finisher. There are just a lot of things in Paulo's game that I don't think translate to a true transcendent first overall pick franchise star. And the Magic have banked into that a lot. And right now it's just not panning out in the way that they'd like it to.
It's unfortunate, truthfully, because he does have all the tools to be the player that everybody thinks that he can be. But it does boil down to one simple thing. His shot selection is super questionable. He does not know what's a go-to that he can rely on consistently. He has the talent. He has the attributes to be great. He's a great passer. He's a great playmaker for the position that he plays. You mentioned the size, the athleticism. What I hold on to, and I'll admit it, I'm very honest about it when I talk about Paulo, his playoff resume is impressive. Albeit 2 series, 2 very impressive ones against 2 high-quality opponents in the Cavaliers with Evan Mobley, who guarded him exceedingly well. The regular box score numbers say Paulo played great, but when Evan Mobley played on him, it was evident. Mobley showed that he is one of the best defenders in the world. And then against the Celtics, Paulo played extremely well. So that's where I kind of fall back to for the moments. He rises. It's just the every other night game during the regular season that you don't know what version of Paulo Banchero you're going to get. I think that as he grows older, the game will become a little bit easier because naturally you play, you get smarter. You just would have liked to see it quicker. And if you're the Magic, you banked on it being this year. We give up 5 first-round picks because we think you're the guy. We think you, Franz Bane, is enough to get over this hump of not being a locked every single season top 4 team in the East. And with the Pacers going to the NBA Finals last year, what's the excuse for us not to go? Because now everybody's going to point the finger at Paulo because all the advanced stats favor that Franz is the more efficient player, that the offense and the defense are just better with Franz on the court. When Paulo, we know the talent he has, it's just the inconsistencies that kill. He doesn't have the greatest consistent jump shot, and I think that he thinks that he's a much better jump shooter than he is. And his ability not to finish at the basket at a high enough clip does not justify him settling for jump shots either. So I think it's just a matter of him locking in and figuring out what is going to get me a consistent bucket. For the Magic, I still like where it's headed. I think Desmond Bane's been playing pretty strong basketball. It's just health is a huge concern when you talk about the Orlando Magic. So when we talk about the Magic, it's going to be the obvious finger pointing at Paulo, which I think is fair to a certain extent, but the 2 guys can't stay healthy. And that's the real concern.
I don't think it comes down to just one individual player because when I look at this Magic offense, to me, what they lack is a cohesive identity. And when you mention the draft capital that they poured into Desmond Bane this offseason, none of this has come together naturally. They're 28th in three-point percentage. Their offense is not taking that gigantic step forward that many expected, adding one of the best shooters in the league.
Yep.
And Paulo, of course, has stagnated in a way, in a sense that his mid-range shooting, which is also a part of his game, it's been very disappointing. And the finishing is not taking that progressive step forward. And we all look at the players, Franz, Paulo, and I think most of the blame has been put on Paulo. He is in a very significant slump given the expectation that people had. But I don't believe nearly enough people have acknowledged the fact the infrastructure and the system is what you should replace before just having a knee-jerk reaction saying it's got to be a player we're trading away. To me, I would say the Magic this year, they clearly have not taken that big step forward. To me, I think it's time to find a more innovative and kind of open-minded offensive coach.
Okay.
Someone who will elevate these players. Jamal Mosley is a good defensive coach, but he's not the coach that's going to take this team from point B to point C. So I think in a way, it's very lazy to say Paulo is the main reason for these issues, but we're going to keep the same head coach, we're going to keep the same offensive structure, and we're just going to pin all the blame on the 23-year-old who is a kind of his traits and his skills.
Yes, I agree.
Shows this untapped potential, but he's still a raw player that maybe has not developed at the rate that people would hope, given the fact he was the first overall pick.
I'm with you.
So when I look at this Magic team, I think it's very frustrating in a sense that you can't. People want to pin the blame on one player, and you can't necessarily do that. Some people just throw it all on Paulo. Franz Wagner has not necessarily been his best version of himself.
Agreed.
Last year, when he was healthy, at least the last 2 years, he was better himself. I think it starts with the coaching, and it works its way down. To me, that is a big reason why it's not just Paulo. This entire rotation is stagnated. And then you have guys like Jalen Suggs who are in and out the lineup. So
But he's been healthy this year.
Suggs, he's played 33 games, and you can't rely on him to play those 35 minutes a night because you're afraid he's going to get hurt again.
That defense is special.
Of course, that's why they have to rely on Anthony Black, who's been the one positive, the one silver lining, because it has Jalen Suggs played, yes, but you also know for a fact he's not reliable to stay on the floor for 70 games if he's playing the same workload as a Marcus Smart. If he's playing 32 to 34 minutes, he is an injury-prone player. So to me, no, he's not someone I depend on as my starting point.
So how you, Mr. John Tortorelli, having the seat of being the Magic's general manager, navigate an offseason in which next year you are without a doubt a second apron team?
Pray.
Because you're saying it's not about blowing it up, it's about bringing somebody new. And I do agree, Jamal Mosley's time is ticking in Orlando, but this is also a team that is very clearly went all in. They're going to be a second apron team because of Paulo's extension kicking in relatively soon.
Yeah.
So now you got to get below that. And it's going to come down to trading one of the big contracts on the team.
Jalen Suggs.
He's been the most impactful player this year.
At the end of the day, when you look at the injury concerns, it's not someone I trust long-term in that second and third contract. And no, I'm not trading Paulo Banchero at 23 opposed to giving him an extension and giving these young players every chance, these core pillars in Franz and Paulo, the chance to prove themselves together. But to me, I think it starts with the head coach, and I would choose Anthony Black long-term over Jalen Suggs because of those durability questions.
And you also don't have to pay Anthony Black as of right now, you know.
I think there's there's a fear here, and then you could chime in on the deals. There's a fear here that we're seeing a Tatum and Jaylen Brown 2.0 scenario.
That's always been the comp.
In which neither of these guys are either of those two players. And I think that's the biggest difference. They might be similar height, they might have similar physical tools, but they're not those players. And that's why I think that holding out to that idea that they can be that is misguided.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the comparisons between them and the Jays, and I know a lot of Magic fans feel the same way, where it's like, you know, Boston, you were patient with them, and, you know, you were able to build around them, and you got different coaches in and all of that. But the Boston duo also showed you in the playoffs that we could go on runs, you know, like we can make ECFs even when things aren't right around us, and we have these weird lineups and weird rosters and coaches in or out. Like they had shown consistently to minimum make the playoffs, win playoff series, make an ECF, and the Magic just haven't been able to show that. I'm not out. I don't think anyone's saying we're out on Paulo. Just turned 23 years old, and it's difficult because you see so many young players today progress so quickly. And we think of progression as linear, and more often than not, it's not linear. So when you see someone like Paulo, who #1 overall pick, you know, the skill set, 6'10", everything there, you want to see him be better than he is right now, right? Like he's averaging his career low since his rookie season. He's around 20 points per game. The efficiency hasn't improved. I think just his internal speed hasn't gotten better. Like he still is a good playmaker, but you would hope that he's picking up on things quicker, but a lot of the times he gets the ball and he's kind of like, you know, trying to figure things out instead of it just coming naturally to him. So I think a lot of the frustrations that we've seen with Paulo over the last few years are still there, and we want him to get better at this, and it just hasn't happened. Part of that, I think, is a lot due to injuries. He just hasn't been on the court enough. He hasn't been practicing enough. I think part of that is just still the spacing, right? You talked about their lack of shooting even after getting Jalen Suggs healthy, even after trading for Desmond Bane. It's still not a very well-spaced team. And then the coaching with Jamal Mosley, right? I don't think Jamal Mosley is an offensive innovator by any means. For being honest, this is a team that had been a top 2 defense the last 2 years. Now they're middle of the pack, right? We're talking about offense and how their shooting's not there, but like defensively, they've fallen off a cliff as well. So it's difficult to to paint this as anything other than like a negative picture for the Orlando Magic, because you did go all in, right? If you didn't make this move for Desmond Bane and you didn't just pay Paulo Banchero $250 million, I think it's okay to sit here and be like, no, you got to be patient. You got to let this ride out. But like Joel is saying, this is a second apron team next year, right? It's okay to be a second apron team if you're making ECF and finals pushes and you have multiple top 10, top 20 players on your team. The Magic don't have that, right? Like, we don't even know if they have a top 15 player. We think there could be a day that Franz or Paulo can be those guys, but right now they just aren't showing it. So you have a mixture of just a lot of things going wrong for a super expensive team. And I think the number one thing they will do is they'll fire Jamal Mosley and they'll try to sell us and try to sell the fans on, we're going to bring in this new coach who's going to figure out offense and make Paulo and Franz and all of this work together. When realistically, I think it just goes deeper than that. Like, I think you have a serious problem with Paulo and Franz not being able to mesh. Neither of them are really consistent shooters. Neither of them can consistently stay healthy. And then the role players like a Jalen Suggs also can't stay healthy. So it's really an organizational issue where you went all in on Desmond Bane, you gave up all this draft capital, and you paid all these guys already, and you just don't have nothing to show for it.
Shit, that sucks that Bane's been really playing.
Bane's been awesome, and it's not even like, that's not a shot at Desmond Bane. You gave up the 5 first, and he's holding up his end of the bargain, but he was supposed to be the third piece. He was supposed to be the chess piece that you had a lot of these other things figured out, and that's been the bigger issue.
You made a great point that their defense has taken a big step back.
Yeah.
And a big reason for that is their 2 best defenders can't play 30 minutes a night. They can't consistently be on the floor to close games night in, night out. And I think that's a very big part of it as well. And I think the Jalen Suggs element, not shooting the ball, I expect him to shoot not as well as he did in that small sample size. I believe it was a year ago, close to 40%. I expect him to make 36% of his threes, kind of league average. And he's dipped well below that. So
He's only shot well 1 year.
Correct. As good as a defender as he is,
such a disruptor, though.
As good as a defender as he is, I think this is the
32.
offseason to capitalize on what value is left. Because that is $32 million in the books. That would get you to 190 next year, opposed to 200.
Jalen Suggs is the biggest positive of the Magic this year. He has the best on-off splits of anybody on the Magic.
He can't play 30 minutes a night.
I'm going to say Desmond Bane's been the number one player for them. Consistency.
When he's been on the floor, it's been clear. Like he just makes such a big difference.
His defense is amazing. I agree.
Here's the thing, bro. Is like, you need to make tough decisions. I think that it's smarter for organizations to go off a player a year too early than a year too late. The same things that's being said about Paulo with the playoff performances being great. That's the same thing I heard about John Morant as to why people always held out hope for him long term. Well, man, his playoff series are amazing. They're exceptional. And then we saw him just regress year to year. I'm looking at Paulo. For 4 years in Orlando, he's been a negative for them. When he's on the floor, he's a negative. They are better. The Magic are better as a team when he's off the floor. I look at who he is as a player, because sometimes the on and off numbers can be tricky. So therefore, okay, let me evaluate you as an individual. Paulo Banchero is one of the worst volume scorers from an efficiency perspective in the NBA. He's a poor finisher. He's a poor mid-range shooter. He's a poor three-point shooter. He's a poor decision maker. Building around Paulo is difficult because he has the play style of a heliocentric offensive player, but he cannot net you the offensive results that warrant him getting the ball as much as he gets the ball.
I'm with you.
So at that point in time, that's why the Magic's offense flows better when he's off the floor, because now all of a sudden everybody's touching the ball a little bit more. The ball is moving a little bit more better without him. And where I'm at with Paulo is that I think a lot of his game is really a detriment to himself for the things he settles for. But this is who he is. And this is who he has been from high school, from college to now. He is a tough shot taker, a tough shot maker, but he's not making them nearly enough for him to be a viable, consistent, high-end offensive option. And then defensively, he's offering close to nothing. Out of 260 players per 36 minutes, he is dead last in deflections per game. He is not active defensive whatsoever. So now we're talking about defensively, he is really not active, playing past the lanes, defending at a high level, but then offensively, he's a clear negative to the team. So that's why I look at this as a Paulo thing, because the Magic have granted him this freedom because he was the first overall pick. And because he was the first overall pick, he's getting the most leeway to fail. But any player with these numbers, with these splits, that wasn't the first overall pick, we're talking about Jalen Green territory, where you're looking at a player and you don't think he's that valuable to the team. And listen, Jalen Green can turn around his career, but that was the perception around Jalen Green. He scores points, but they're inefficient, they're empty, and he tends to be a negative for his team. That is Paulo Banchero, but he's getting more leeway than somebody like that.
2 ideas came into my mind while everyone was talking. The first being, if Paulo Banchero improves at the rate that Julius Randle improved, would you be disappointed?
Yeah, as number 1 overall pick.
But you get the output and the result that Julius Randle gave you.
I'll say this, if Paulo Banchero becomes, which I think it's actually very plausible that Paulo's ceiling is
Julius Randle.
Julius Randle.
That's what I really put some thought into it.
But even then, number 1, that's a disappointment for Paulo.
Okay.
And number 2, he's already getting paid like a max star. So Julius Randle went from the Pelicans to the Knicks, and he wasn't making max money. Even now, his perception of him from the Knicks in the playoffs led to the negotiations for the Timberwolves being favorable, and he's still not getting paid like a max player. Right now, Paulo's going to be making 50 to 55 million per season. He's already getting paid like a true number 1 upper echelon franchise star. So at this point, the expectations of a Julius Randle aren't there, because we paid you like a guy. You got to now be a guy. There ain't no being the 3rd best guy on the team. There isn't none of that. If his contract was more favorable to him, then I would agree with you. But his contract has made it so the expectation has already been put on him to be that.
I agree with what you said. The one difference with Randall, who took that big step forward when he got to New York the second season, and Paulo, is that even with all these things going on, Dale's made a great point. I think his internal speed and processing the mental side is not developed. And that's kind of like the thing that can't be fully fleshed out looking at a box score. And that's been a core reason of his shot selection and kind of lack of development. But the thing with Paulo is that he's getting the foul line at such an exorbitant rate with his physical tools that Randall wasn't quite doing that his first 4 years, getting the foul line 8 times a night. Now he's only making about 76% of a clip. But I think for any high volume scorer, that gives you that baseline, that credible floor that Paulo already has, to where it's like, if you make these incremental jumps in these other areas, I think that gives him this difference between him and some of these other power forwards in the NBA. The way in which he can create these advantages and gets to the foul line consistently, that is the one thing right now he still does do at a high level. And I feel like that's still the crux of him being that elite level scorer one day. In a way, I think you made a great point. In this sense right now, he is Jalen Green, but in a power forward. But there's still, to me, that hope. And I'm always going to be Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't really care. I'm going to be, and I've been very high on Paulo since he was drafted, I'm going to be the person that sits up here and I'm going to defend him for
I respect
a very long time. And I'm going to give him a bit of a leeway, but it's for that reason that I'm so optimistic, even in a time where something is clearly missing. I think we covered some of it, but there's something a little bit deeper that I think the Magic need to do everything they can to reorient this core.
That's how I felt when he said Herbert wasn't top 10. I was like, I'm going to believe.
And find a system that can really amplify and make these 3 players complement each other. I also think, too, they're going to have to make some moves around the edges.
Number 2, would you trade Paulo for Zion?
No.
Who's the worst player you trade Paulo for? Not talking about a 1-for-1 swap, but he's the headliner of the deal with other things attached. I have a name already.
Evan Mobley.
I'd rather have Mobley. Wait, you're saying the worst player you would trade Paulo away for?
Yes.
Yeah, I would definitely rather have Mobley. Laurie?
We can get worse.
Michael Porter Jr.
You're getting crazy.
The Nets attach things to it, right? The Nets will attach some picks to it, but
if you're the Magic and you're like, we're going in on Franz, we want someone who could space, but has shown that if he's number 1, he could give you 25 plus a night.
MPJ was a championship number 3. Let's not forget that.
So
well,
MPJ,
the Magic are trying to get their championship.
MPJ with Bane would be amazing
just
space.
saying,
See the vision.
I see the vision too.
I see the vision.
People are
Magic
gonna-
fans aren't gonna love it.
And if I'm being honest,
People are gonna hate
what
that, I
more
know.
are the Nets adding on? Like, they got on something, but like, you're not adding on 4 first-round picks. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
no.
You got it on what? Like,
So would you take
two
Zion?
firsts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not Zion because of the durability and because of the lack of 3-point shooting.
Can you get worse than MPJ?
Like, worse than MPJ?
Would you trade him
Şengün?
for Brandon Ingram?
No.
Nah.
All right, I want to see how nuts we get.
I think Michael Porter Jr. is perfect because he's close to his deal ending, and also he's just averaging like 26 points per game. Was he an All-Star this year?
No.
Ah, damn, that's unfortunate. Should have been an All-Star.
All-star caliber player
Yeah,
in Brooklyn.
yeah, in Brooklyn. That's a
And
big
Brooklyn's
caveat.
bit huge, actually.
But yeah, it's really, I feel like for more so, it's like the Nets. Like, why are you gonna bank on Paulo?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're the Nets, are you willing to give up 2 first-round picks on top of MPJ is like Paulo showing you enough to do it? It's the idea of it makes sense because like this could be the franchise guy. This could be the number 1 option because he does have the playmaking and the size and everything you would want. But that'd be a bold move if I'm the Nets.
If you get burned again and get the 7th overall pick after all this again, yeah.
We're gonna stay on the top.